I remember this one thing very distinctly about when my daughter was, I think she was graduating from kindergarten or had some special event at school. I think it was kindergarten or even like fourth grade, preschool. And I got there late because I couldn't get out of a meeting at work. And the daycare or the school where she was in daycare was like 20 minutes from my or 15 minutes from my office. So I raced over there and I got there for part of it.
Yeah.
And she came up to me at the end, mommy, mommy. And she said, did you see me in the beginning? And I was like, yes, I can't believe it. You're so amazing. And I lied to her.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me. And it made me really think like, that I can't miss these things. And it sort of, it was maybe it was just sort of emotional and a pressure that
Mm.
I felt on myself to never be late, to never miss the beginning. And more importantly, never lie to my kids.
Hi, guys. I am your host, Megan Van Dievender, and this is the Empowerhood podcast. Empowerhood is all about empowering women no matter where you are and what season you are in life right now. We provide encouragement, inspiration, and resources to get you through anything that you might be going through. Tune in and listen to so many incredible stories from women that have failed, celebrated, thrived, made mistakes. We can all learn from each other to become the best versions of ourselves. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy this episode. All right, cool. So everyone out there listening today, we have Kara Conway Love with us. And Kara, I'm so excited to hear your story. Kara's going to spread some of her incredible wisdom for us today, from when you were a mom to completely like changing your life around and now you're a grandmother. So I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear all about this. So why don't you start and tell us a little bit about you? Who is Kara?
Kara is a lot of things, a lawyer, a mom, a wife, a friend, an aunt, a grandmother, a speaker, an educator, and just an athlete, a lover of outdoors, just a million things. Just
Yeah.
my life seems to have been as busy as, just as busy as it possibly could be all of my life. I've been working since I was 14, and I guess I've had an entrepreneurial spirit for a long time. So
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds
keep
like it.
keeps going.
Yeah. How many kids do you have, Kara?
I have three, and they're all in their late 20s or early 30s. The oldest is almost 31, and the rest are 29 and soon to be 27. So we're in an odd year this year of the of them. They're all just about 2 years apart, and they're
Okay.
all science related. And my husband's an engineer, so they all get talking about science and technology, and I have literally no idea what they're talking about. So it's I just sit there and try to follow, but it can be bewildering a little bit sometimes.
So no one followed in your lawyer footsteps.
No lawyers, no, and I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm amazed at these people that we made. They're one's an engineer, one's has a doctorate as a nurse practitioner, and one's getting a PhD in cancer cell biology in
Wow.
Switzerland. So, like, I can't fault their past. They're all doing amazing
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And they're all happy, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
most important thing. They're healthy and happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
they love what they do. So it's
yeah.
just, that's kind of what you really want the most. And I never encouraged any of them to be a lawyer or,
Mm,
um, I mean, I think when I grew up, my father was a lawyer, my grandfather was a lawyer and a judge, and my brother was a lawyer, and I kind of always thought I should be a lawyer. And
mm,
then somewhere along the way, I kind of didn't really want to be a lawyer anymore. Or I
mm.
just felt like I had done all that I needed to do as a lawyer. And while I still practice law, it's on a sort of more limited basis, and I'm doing a lot of other things now. So
Right, right. That's really cool. Yeah. So, I mean, while you're talking about law and how you got out of law, so I mean, let's go back to, when you became a mom. Did you stay home, or did you immediately go into work, after your maternity, or how did that work for you?
yeah, I went back to work when the kids were, after maternity leave. Some of them were longer leaves than others. And we had a nanny who came into our house who was this older woman, and she was like a grandmother to them. So we were
Mm,
very, very fortunate to be able to have somebody in the house who was, we completely trusted.
mm.
She spoiled our little one rotten, and the other two are still still give her a hard time about that, which is so funny.
Oh, that's so
But
funny.
but I always worked when the kids were my oldest was born. I was working with my father, was my law partner at the time, or well, right shortly after that, and I had the flexibility to not have to. I mean, I did a lot of work at home every night. That's kind of one of the things I regret is after the kids went to bed, I was always back at my computer. And, even in
Mm.
those days, we didn't have VPN and we weren't like doing Zoom calls, but I was always working sort of after hours. But the balance part of that, and I've never been a firm believer in that sort of
Mm.
perfect balance, was you just did the best you can to keep up with everything. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know
So
you said to me like when we were chatting that you had some regrets that you looked back on because I know you did go through some really stressful periods of your career. Now, what were those regrets? Like what did you feel the most regret towards like when your kids were little?
Well, when my oldest was little, he actually was in daycare for a time, and it was right near my office, so that was easy enough. And then when I had my second baby, we had somebody coming into the house, and we were sharing daycare with my sister and her kids who were the same age. So I kind of regret not doing that sooner, but also the daycare was fine for him, and
Mm.
he managed well right up until he bit some other little girl, and it's a 2-year-old fighter thing, and
Yeah.
it's just happens. I sort of when the kids were a little bit older and like early school age, I was still work, always I always worked full time. And
Mm.
when the kids got a little bit older, sort of middle school age, my husband was able to cut back his work schedule to like something like 80%. So he was there for the after school, all the practices and homework and that
Mm.
stuff for a few years, which was extraordinarily helpful to our family because while we had a wonderful daycare provider in our home, um, the kids were at the point where they needed help with their homework, and
Mm.
and that was something that was really a blessing. But when they were little, I remember this one thing very distinctly about when my daughter was, I think she was graduating from kindergarten or had some special event at school. I think it was kindergarten or even like fourth grade preschool, and I got there late because I couldn't get out of a meeting at work. And the daycare or the school where she was in daycare was like 20 minutes from my or 15 minutes from my office. So I raced over there and I got there for part of it.
Yeah.
And she came up to me at the end, "Mommy, mommy," and she said, "Did you see me in the beginning?" And I was like, "Yes, I can't believe it. You're so amazing." And I lied to her.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me. And it
Mm.
made me really think like, that I can't miss these things. And it sort of, it was a, maybe just sort of emotional and a pressure that
Mm.
I felt on myself to never be late, to never miss the beginning. And more importantly, never lie to my kids. There were things where,
Mm.
I had to miss things. And
Yeah.
I always put them first as much as I could,
Yeah.
and working for myself my whole life now pretty much,
Mm.
I was able to do that, just to not to work my schedule around their games and their tournaments and their dance recitals. And there was everything from swimming, soccer, and lacrosse, and
Mm.
little league, and you name it. They between the three of them, they did it all. And I mean, dance recital day, my middle daughter was a dancer. That was one of my favorite days of the year. I looked forward to her dance recital
Yeah.
like with such joy. I couldn't wait to that for that day every year because it she was really a great dancer, and it just was such a joyful day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love all of that. And I love what you said that like you just have to do your best. And
Yeah.
I love looking at your life now and like you see your kids and how amazing they are and how successful they are and how happy they are and you can look back and be like I did my best even though I might have some regrets and like wish I could change that stuff, but I still did something right? Cuz like
Yeah. They're amazing
they're
people. They're
amazing,
just,
right?
yeah, they're
Right.
great people. They're kind and compassionate and smart
Yeah.
and driven, but they also have, great family values. And
Yeah.
like we've been taking our family vacations together with them, and we still do. Like,
Mm.
all growing up. Now that they're adults, we went since one of them lives in Switzerland. Our family vacation last year was we met the rest of us went over there and we met her in Spain and spent the
Yeah.
week together. And
Wow.
it just like that they love that. That's something that they look forward to, which brings me a lot of satisfaction knowing that they want to be together. And, we
Mm,
just do simple things like sit on the beach and read books and play games, and we cook and do puzzles, and, everybody is comfortable. And that
yeah.
to me is really that's the best thing I could ask for.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can totally relate with all that you said. I have this moment with my daughter. She was graduating kindergarten, and this was during COVID, so you weren't allowed in the school, but they did
Yeah.
it virtually. And I mean, I own my own business. I already had clients booked, and instead of rescheduling them, I was like, well, I'll try to hop on, virtually in between, and I did. But then my client walked in and I walked away from the computer and I didn't see her, graduate. It's just
Yeah.
kindergarten, but still like that, like I never
Yeah.
get that back. And she doesn't know because like it wasn't in person, but I know and it's
Yeah.
stuck with me forever. And she's 8 now, she's been out of kindergarten for 3 years. But like it's just I can't let that go. But it like
Right.
what do you recommend doing going forward? Like for me, I'm like, well, I'm gonna make these changes where, my family is my number one priority over my business. Not that I don't want to be successful and all that, but like they have to be
Be
it for me.
first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like were you able
Yeah.
to
I
make
mean,
changes like that too? Or like how did you feel after that?
I felt terrible after that. I mean, that was just such a turning point for me
Mm,
that I then, as much as humanly possible, I would schedule time off. And when I had my own law firm for 14 or 15 years, I had an amazing staff. I mean, I think one of the best things that women can do is surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are, who do things that they do things well that they don't do
mm,
well, and finding the right people, because then you can work your schedule around those
mm.
important events that you don't want to miss. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't say that I never missed anything, because I did, but I didn't miss the big things. And
Yeah.
I would, I mean, I would leave when my youngest was playing lacrosse, I would leave work. I had, it would be cold. It would be preseason in early season. And I'd have all these clothes in my car, and I'm taking my suit off in the car and putting all the layers on. And I'm out on the lacrosse field with all the other parents that could be there. And I would never miss those things, or, any of those events, tennis matches, swimming, whatever it was. I wanted to be there. So
Yeah.
I very much, I just encourage people what you just said, you can't get that time back.
Yeah.
Um, and even when you have infants, a friend of mine who has a baby, or well, now they're grown men, he's 31. Um, so just he was 2 months older than my oldest. And I remember her, we were talking when the kids were infants, and my son was a screamer and he never slept well when he was a baby. And I never slept, and it was very hard, that
Yeah.
time when you have newborns. And I remember her saying to me, he will never need you as much as he does right now. So in the middle of the night, when you just like can't feel like you can't do it anymore
Mm.
because you're so tired, you just look at that baby and you say to yourself, you will never need me as much as you do right now. And I think there's times throughout their lives, even, not the newborn phases, but that you have to know that as a mother, that they do need you the most, more
Yeah.
than anything else that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And you really do have to keep that in mind because it's hard, especially as an entrepreneur, to, set up those boundaries because you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm losing money. Like
Yeah.
I'm maybe not building my clientele as quickly as I could because of these boundaries. But then if you think about it, you're like, they do need me. They're not going to be this age forever. They're not
Yeah.
going to be doing these things forever. And it's so important. And I like what you said too, that you can't make it for everything. Like, I mean, I don't think your kids should expect that of you either. But for the
Yeah.
important things, for the big things that's big to them, I
Yeah.
think
Well,
that's
I
so
mean, if,
important.
even for mothers who don't work outside of the house, like,
Hmm.
they can't do every single minute of, I mean, I think it's
Right.
so important as a parent, as a woman, to have some time to yourself. And
Hmm.
while I don't remember having any time to myself when my kids were young, I mean, there were a few isolated times when my husband and I would take a vacation. And I really think that women should prioritize themselves,
Mm.
even when their kids are little, because you have to, you have to fill your own tank. You have to,
Yeah.
even if you want and have a successful career outside the house, I still, to me, what they mattered the most. And,
Yeah.
I am glad that that they know that, even if I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there for everything.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think they did. They saw that, right? They saw how hard you were working. You still took care of yourself. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to fit it all in, but I think what every single thing that you said is so important because right, like how are you supposed to parent? How are you supposed to do life when you're not taking care of yourself? It's just so much harder. And yeah, set those boundaries because I mean, that's what's going to keep you on track to what's most important, right? Really
Yeah.
setting up those boundaries to what you want to happen and what matters most right now.
Yeah, and I think finding a career. I mean, a lot of people don't have flexibility because they don't work for themselves. So the
Mm-hmm.
flip side of that is they get to go in and then they leave at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
whatever their hours are, and they don't have to. Well, now I mean, people are always accessible and email and stuff. And after a while, I had a rule, self-imposed rule. There were certain people who would send emails of all hours of the
Mm-hmm.
day, and some of them were really sort of triggering me to want to have to respond, that they were either just some difficult people.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a rule for myself at one point that after I left my office I would not open those
Mm-hmm.
emails. And I still do that with some
Mm-hmm.
particular couple of people, because it would always make me, first of all, it would cause me way too much anxiety, and I
Stress,
would,
yeah.
yeah, and I just knew that there was nothing I could do to change the way that they were.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to change the way that I
Mm-hmm.
reacted. And that was not reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you set that boundary that a lot of people have a hard time with, because they're always trying to please
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Or the fear of missing out too,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I have people think I'm nuts, but like pretty much from the time my daughter gets off the bus from 2:30 to about 4:30, I don't exist. And then 6 p.m., every single one of my notifications are off for the day. So people
Mm-hmm.
know if they text me, they're not going to get a response until the next day. And that's my family time. That is time with my child. I'm probably running around like crazy. But then at night, it's like that's our time
Yeah.
together that we have. And you're right. As soon as you see an email, as soon as you see a text,
Yeah.
your mind's going in a different direction than where you're supposed to be present. And it does, whether it's causing stress or whatever, it's causing a distraction from what's most important to you
Yeah.
right then. I mean, we go to bed early in my household, so 6 o'clock is necessary for me to shut it off then. It could be
Yeah.
later for other people. But I do think that boundary is so important because otherwise, I mean, those don't stop coming in, right? People are going to
No, they
continue
don't.
and you
There's
can't
people who don't
control
stop.
that. Yeah. So you
Well,
really
and
just.
especially if you have clients or customers or whatever in different time zones,
Mm-hmm.
or people are traveling, but I think I'm glad to see that there does seem to be a little bit of a shift in sort of your generation and even younger professionals who do have boundaries, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important. And I think, obviously I employers are starting to recognize that and
Mm-hmm.
not expecting them to respond, at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. There's still people who do, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's difficult. But for young professionals and young parents to just set that boundary, because if
Mm-hmm.
if the place you're working doesn't recognize your boundaries, then to me it's time to look somewhere else. And I
Right.
wish that I could have done that when my kids were little,
Mm-hmm.
but when you own the business, it's very hard to do that.
It's very hard. Yeah, that's why it's like even more important, I feel like, to set those boundaries
I
because,
agree.
yeah, it's you. You're going up against yourself, and that can be even
Yeah.
harder sometimes than a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are practicing law still, but you have changed your whole entire kind of structure of career, correct?
Yeah, but back, my mom passed away in late 2013, and it really gave my father, who was my law partner for years, way long ago, because he passed away a long time ago. Um, it After my mother died, it really made me stop and sort of rethink what I was doing with my life, my career, what I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to do. And I had been really active in the community, and on boards, and fighting for business as a lawyer, running my own law firm. And it just, I realized at one point that after she died, that I was so focused on that. My
Mm-hmm.
kids were almost, my youngest was almost done with college. Well, actually, she was just starting college. I over that next couple of years, I wanted to just do something that I wanted to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what can I do this?
Mm.
What if I tried to do this? I always had, I didn't always think about that, but it was something that I thought would be fun and I thought
Mm.
would be very fulfilling. So I reached out to some people I knew at Siena College, and they were looking for somebody just sort of coincidentally to restart one of the courses in the business school that they hadn't been able to offer for a few years. It was a business ethics class. And I thought, well, I can teach business ethics. I've been a sort of corporate lawyer for many years and I can do this. But what I couldn't do, and I realized as I sort of got closer to making this decision, was I couldn't continue to do it all. I couldn't
Mm.
run my own law firm. I had several employees. I did a lot of corporate work with a lot of banks and a lot of corporate clients, and I'd worked with a lot of small business owners, and they need you all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it anymore. I knew I physically couldn't do it anymore.
Mm.
So I decided to close my firm as far as employees go. I got rid of my corporate clients. I finished up my term on some boards and things. And I started teaching one class initially, but I was working from home then as a lawyer. And I was still very busy as a lawyer, but I was able to say no to some clients who I previously felt completely committed to. And
Mm.
I actually had clients say, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, there's a thousand other lawyers in the capital region who can do what I do.
Yeah.
And they would love your business and they're very capable. And, I mean, I knew that I was replaceable and pretty much everybody is. So
Mm.
I started teaching at Siena, just one course initially, and then they had asked me to teach another course. So I continued to work from home as a lawyer, and I just felt after about a year, it took me a whole year at least to realize that I felt so much less stressed, even though
Mm.
teaching took up so much of my time.
Yeah.
So I did that for almost 5 years. And then, sort of shortly before the pandemic started, I um, took a step back from teaching and started teaching online. I just sort of got interested in social media. I don't really know why. I never was into it before then, but
Yeah.
I thought it would be really cool to be finding eventually now, sort of 5 years later, what I'm doing is really I'm at the intersection of law and social media. And I love to teach. So I have some classes, I have courses, I have a membership, I do speaking engagements.
Yeah.
Just wrote a
I was
book.
gonna
And
say, yeah, talk about your book.
so it's called Leverage Your Influence. It's a book
Awesome.
really designed for influencers, creators, bloggers, podcasters to sort of empower them to understand negotiations, contracts,
Mm.
because there's a lot of people teaching influencers and creators how to negotiate, but
Mm.
they don't have the legal experience that I've sort of opened up in this book, is really to just for people to better understand what they're doing
Yeah.
so that they can make better decisions about it. For example, if they're working with a brand and they're giving up all the rights to their content from a
Mm.
usage rights standpoint, so allows the brand to do anything with their content, advertising, everything else. A lot of people don't understand that they should be paid more for that.
Okay.
They're not just giving the brand the right to repost their stuff on social media. They're giving the
Mm.
brand the right to put them on a billboard. And
Right.
that happens, or use them in a paid ad, or people on the side of a bus that they didn't realize that was something they were giving up and not getting paid for. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to empower creators. And then I also work with brands on developing their influencer marketing programs, legal compliance issues, FTC rules, and a lot of other things that are relevant to business owners and brands.
Very cool. So how are you liking this path that you're on right now? Like, do you feel totally different than when you were, a
Yeah.
partner in the law firm? Okay. So you said less stress. Like, what else has come along with it?
Well, it's just fun to me right now. And I
Yeah.
think that was the thing with my career as a lawyer. I full time, I just wasn't having fun anymore. That I
Yeah.
had done, and I sort of achieved what I thought I should achieve from a business standpoint. Not monetarily, but just sort of, I was kind of burned out.
Yeah.
And now this really lights me up. I'm having fun. I love working with entrepreneurs and small business owners and just educating people about it. So I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that's a better place for me right now. And I don't know
Yeah.
that I'm going to do it forever, but I love to do speaking engagements and talk to business owners and brands and entrepreneurs and creators about what they can do to protect their business, to make more money. So it's fun.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So, yeah, everyone, I mean, I'm going to link your Instagram below and whatnot, but whoever's listening, go on your page and take a look because, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, like you said, we don't even know
Yeah.
how to do any of that, as an
Yeah.
influencer, even just like if someone reaches out and wants to promote your stuff, I have no idea what to do. I definitely need to read your
Right.
book, that's for sure, which I'm going to link that below too.
Well,
And being
it's
a podcast host and
right. If somebody wants to sponsor your podcast eventually, that would be a great
yeah,
revenue
and I
stream for
am
you.
starting to look for sponsors. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit particular, but again, I need to read that just to kind of get my ducks in a row and to be able to do it properly and
Yeah.
find the right
Well, and
sponsorship.
to not get taken advantage of. So,
Yes,
to
yeah,
be really to empower you to know what you're worth and to reach out to brands if you want to do that, not wait for them to come to you, but to
yeah,
structure a deal that is going to make you more money, and that you feel good about working with a brand that you want to work with. So
yeah.
there's so much into it. And there's a lot of people teaching um, kind of the same material, but they don't have the legal background,
Mm,
which I really enjoy bringing my sort of entrepreneurial spirit and my legal background into the social media world.
yeah, yeah. That's really cool. And I think that is unique having that legal background too. So now you're so happy in your career and whatnot, and you're a grandmother. So tell us a little bit about that. So, how is this so different from you than being a mom?
Oh, it's so much better. I mean, I don't say better. I mean, easier. Like
Yeah,
I mean, the parents have all do all the hard work. The grandparents, I mean, it's just it brings me so much joy to
yeah.
see them. My grandson is almost 3,
Okay.
and then we have a new baby girl in the same family. And so she's just 6 weeks old now. So
Oh,
she's,
wow,
doesn't
little.
quite understand the grandparent thing yet. But
Right.
I mean, like my husband is our grandson's he's like it's his personal clown. And he's such an adorable little boy. And we are just can't get enough of this little boy. We just, being a grandparent is the easy part.
Right. It's like the fun part where you don't have to
Right.
parent them kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah.
No, you
Yeah.
don't. And so it's not, it's just so much different than being a parent because it's just, you get all the good parts. And then when they're overtired, they go home with their parents and,
Right.
then the parents have to deal with it.
Absolutely. Now, do you find that is this your daughter or son that has
My son,
your
yeah,
son? So
has
does he come to you for advice or anything like that? Like during his
sometimes,
parenting?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny the way that young people parent now. Everything is, they have so many tools
Mm.
and automations, and there's an app for, every time the baby drinks or poops or sleeps or eats, like they put it in an app. And
Yeah.
I talk to other grandparents and people my age, and they're like, yeah, I mean, when the baby poops, they both get up and go change a diaper. Well, no one ever helped me change a diaper. Like,
Yeah.
and no one ever, and I
Yeah.
didn't help my husband when he was changing a diaper. You just did it by yourself.
Right.
I think it's wonderful that the two parents have the ability to be involved in all that. It's just very different than what we did.
Yeah. It is crazy how things have changed. I mean, my daughter's 8, and even since then, a lot has come
Yeah,
along. But I remember when my daughter was born, my mom would like question things, and there's 4 of us. I'm like, Mom, you had
yeah,
4 kids. And she's like, Megan, things are so different now
yeah.
than when, you were a baby. And it
Right.
is so true. Yeah, there are so many different tools. I was just curious that if they came to you for advice, or have you
Yeah,
ever
sometimes.
like talked to them about things that you would have done differently, like you talked here on the podcast, or have you brought that up with them?
Well, as a parent, no, I don't think so because the little guy is still young,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, there'll be times where I'm sort of biting my tongue
Mm-hmm.
about, for example, when he was a little bit younger, he'd just be yelling at the table. That we'd be eating dinner and he's just yelling and or saying or just and I'll just say just ignore it because he's doing it to get attention. And if you say, you have to be quiet and we're eating dinner, stop throwing your food, like that's just fueling the fire. And
Yeah.
now I see them doing that. So it's funny that sort of they understand that, you just ignore it because that's something that,
Yeah.
they were like, oh, we got to be quiet. It's dinner time, eat your food. Well, 2-year-olds don't do that. Like, it's
Yeah.
not.
Right.
So I think
Right.
the wisdom of sort of having raised 3 kids,
Yeah.
I do, and sometimes even with the baby, they'll ask questions and I'll give my opinion and things. But I try to not sort of
Yeah.
over grandparent, because I think some parents, I think maybe it's a little different because it's a boy and not a girl. If it were my daughters, one of them, I might be a little more involved, or they might be a little more asking
Right.
questions. But honestly, they just go online and research everything. We didn't have that when my kids were little.
Yeah.
You didn't like
Yeah.
Google something. There was no, you read the what to expect when you were expecting was like the Bible,
Yes. Yeah.
and
I remember
everybody read
that
it.
book. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the only source besides asking your own parents what to do.
Right. Well, that's why I was curious that they asked you. I mean, I feel like I did ask my mom certain things, but it was more like, well, what was this like for you? Like, am I experiencing the same things? But I get what you're saying, where it's like, it's not your daughter, it's your daughter-in-law. So that's a little bit different. So yeah, I get that, because I feel like my mom is different with my sister-in-laws than she was with like my sister and I, where she'd be like, don't
Right.
do that. Like, what's wrong with you? Or
Yeah.
not that like, but both, I mean, my parents and my mother-in-law are very respectful of the way we parent. And I think, like you said, like, it's like you have to tread kind of carefully on that. It's like they almost have to like come to you for advice rather than
Yeah.
just like spouting out advice.
Yeah. And I think that if you interfere, you can sort of create a barrier that, there's times where they ask questions, and or he's been sick or things, and we're all very involved in that. And we're
Yes.
lucky that they live close by, so we get to see them a lot. But I think, some parents are sort of mingling a little too much, and that creates a resistance, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are you the type of grandparent that spoils them rotten, like lots of candy, sugar? Like, what do you
No,
do? Okay.
no, we're not we're the, like, to me, spoiling them rotten is spending time with him, reading books, going to the playground,
Yeah.
playing with trucks, because he's like such a boy and he's so into truck things. And
Yeah.
that just is such an opportunity to grow with him, to grow a bond with him.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I don't ever give him cookies, but he doesn't walk in the house and run to the pantry for cookies. He
Yeah.
does sometimes walk in and say, "I want a bar," like
Like a
Nutri-Grain
granola bar?
like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, because he's hungry, but he doesn't walk in and say, "Give me cookies."
Okay. Yeah. My mom is like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. And my daughter will be like, you know what? Grammy really likes to feed me. And then my mother-in-law, she'll be like, Nanny really likes to buy me things.
Yeah.
And that's like what she knows. And I'm like, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be like that though. But they're
No.
great players though too. I think that's what kids remember the most is, that time that you're going to spend with them like on the
Yeah.
floor. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with Grammy likes to feed me and Grammy likes to buy me things. I mean, I think having that sort of that's a special bond. Like, Grammy always makes my favorite cookies when I come over or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
and then the next stage is Grammy teaching you how to make those favorite cookies. Like that, you evolve as a grandparent, hopefully,
Totally.
into all of that, which,
Yes.
it's hard still with our little guy, because he's only, almost 3, but
Yeah.
I would definitely, that would be something that's really important to us.
Yeah, and I feel like they really do remember that stuff. Like my daughter definitely remembers baking with my mom, when she was younger, and they still do that. And yeah, maybe just like finding your thing. I remember certain things when I was little with my grandparents. We would always have root beer floats.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that was special because I didn't have that at home. So maybe it's not super fancy, but it was just something that I did with my grandparents. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my grandmother's favorite ice cream was maple
Yeah.
ice cream, maple nut or whatever it was. And she just, like, that was her thing, and she loved it. And we all had our favorites.
Yeah. Don't mind my dog.
Now, I was
Barking.
just looking behind me to see if it was my dog.
So he's almost 13, so he's pretty much deaf. But
Yeah.
he sees the mailman. So
Yeah.
you guys get a little preview of McCourty on here today.
So good.
But yeah, so I mean, just like awesome memories as grandparents. I'm sure you're really enjoying that. Now you have the little baby too. So a girl and a
Yes.
boy, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
So we're just feeling very lucky, and she's adorable, and I can't wait for her to get a little older, where they actually start to recognize
Yeah.
and interact. And
Well, that's
it's
really
just-
soon though. 6 weeks, so probably around like 8 weeks, she'll start smiling and
yeah. We got a little smile out of her last weekend.
Uh,
One of my other daughters was home from Switzerland for a couple of days, so we got to see her, and I was, of course, like with my phone taking pictures, trying to get her to smile, and I got a little one.
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting. Well, that's awesome, Kara. So where do you see, yourself, your business, your family, 5 to 10 years from now? What are you looking forward to?
Well, that's such a good question. I'm sort of at a path where I'm trying to figure out whether I want to spend more time sort of doing speaking engagements and
Mm.
working with brands. I don't ever want to be sort of at this age, I don't want to be working as hard as I have worked all my life. But also at the same time, I don't know what else I would do. I love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I would love to continue to grow my business. I have a small membership where I have entrepreneurs and creators in there, and we work on business issues, legal issues, ideas,
Mhm.
using social media to grow their brands. And that brings me a lot of joy because I love bouncing ideas with, off of people, bouncing ideas off of me, and me trying to support the members. And that is not just fun, but it really, I feel like I'm using my background, my skills to help
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So I don't see that changing. I potentially might write another book,
Yeah.
sort of more on the business brand entrepreneur side, where a little less on the social media influencer creator side, because I also do some work as an influencer, so I kind of know both sides of that spectrum, and I would like to help more brands, grow their, really empower them to use social media to grow. So
Yeah.
I'm working on that and just kind of continuing to do what I do.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Now, as you get more grandchildren, will you take some more time off or work less hours to kind of help with them, or is that your
I,
plan?
yeah, I would love to do that. I
Yeah.
really, just being around them is such a priority for me, and not missing, those times in their life, because I can really set my own schedule now. I
Yeah.
don't have employees, and even when
Right.
I worked for my own law firm for so many years, I had employees. I had to be there. I was responsible to them
Yeah.
and the client. So now I have more flexibility, and that is such a priority for me.
Yeah.
And doing things like going to yoga. I mean, I would never have done that 5 years ago, but now I go and I do yoga at home a lot. So it's my own health has become a priority as well.
That's huge. Do you ever like look back at your like journey and your the trajectory of your path and like how it led you to here and you're like, "Oh, so that's why that happened." Like I had to take a step back. I had to make changes, but now I'm like right in this like beautiful spot, which seems so right, right? Like you're taking
Yeah.
care of yourself, you have grandbabies now, you can take more time off, it's like I love looking at that. Do you ever look at that?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I do a little bit in the sense that starting to teach as a college professor
Mhm.
was not something I ever thought, someday when I grow up, or when I'm done
Yeah.
being a lawyer, which I'm still not done, but someday I want to be a college professor. That was not something I aspired to throughout my career.
Mm.
But I think being an educator was something inside of me that I didn't realize I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look back on that, and I don't really know I think the turning point was that I was getting burned out in my full-time law career.
Yep.
And this kind of just presented itself as something I could do. And then I loved it. I loved working with college age kids and challenging them and having students sign up for my other course in, the next semester, because they wanted to have me as a teacher again. And like that
Yeah.
was so fulfilling to me, and it
Yeah.
made me really get into the space I'm in now. So
Exactly. Yeah, like you probably wouldn't have written a book, right? And like
no,
trying to
no.
teach like I think that's just so cool. And I feel like sometimes in life you kind of wonder like why am I in this spot? But like somehow it all works out, right? In
Yeah,
the
like how
end.
did
It's
I get
like
here? I don't
right.
know. I don't know how I got here. It wasn't a path that I thought I,
Yeah.
was planning on, but
Yeah.
it's a path I'm very happy with right now. So,
Yeah.
um, and I love working with people. So even throughout the pandemic, I mean, if it wasn't for social media, I would have been so isolated
Yeah.
as everyone was. So
Right.
I kept a lot of friendships alive with other people that I know from social media. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
important.
It's really cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved hearing your story and I appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I think I
Yeah.
love what you're doing
Oh,
with,
thank you.
with women, and helping empower them as mothers and now grandmothers. I just think it's just such a great um, a path for you to share.
Yeah, you know what? This speaking of that, I never thought I would be a podcast host or a coach. I always thought I would just do hair, but it's like if I can help people more, I'll see where it
Yeah.
brings me. I feel like I'm in kind of a transition period of like where is this taking me? But
Yep.
you kind of have to trust God's plan and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a plan. You may not know
Yeah.
about it all yet, but the thing you ask yourself is, are you enjoying that part of your life?
Right. Well, sometimes when you're in challenging parts of your life, it can seem not so joyful right now, but
Right.
I know it's there and I know you always come out stronger, on the other side. So, like I said, God has a plan and you just got to have faith in it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Agree.
again. I'm going to link all of your information below so everyone can find you. I'm going to do your
Great.
website, your Instagram, and we'll put your book on there. I'm so excited for
Great.
you.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's also on Amazon. So a lot of people are finding they
Okay.
like the print copy because they're taking notes in it. It's full of resources and sort of contacts of people to do things that I'm not an expert at, but I've given
Yeah.
out a lot of information. So it's helpful for people to grow.
Awesome. I need to go
All right.
order that right now.
Thanks.
All right.
I
Thanks again,
appreciate
Kara.
being here. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you soon.